Welcome back to EDU-Tutor. Today we're going to be looking at May-June 2024, Paper 2, Question 2. If you want to see Question 1, please click the link above or follow the playlist. We have all of the questions on the playlist. Alright, so Question 2 looks at limited liability companies, and I went ahead to reduce time to start to add the answers. All right, because I didn't want it to be too lengthy. So number 2 says state one advantage of a limited liability company. So remember that limited liability company would be a group of persons who can buy shares into a company. So this company has easier financing because they can get financing from different shareholders. They have limited liability, which is also an advantage because, of course, if anything happens in the company and the company is being sued or bankrupt, then the owners or the shareholders' personal assets will not be affected by this. Also, this company usually has a larger capital base. And then the disadvantages, though, is that financial statements must be published to the public, and sometimes it's lengthier decision making because of too much bureaucracy and the fact that everything has to be approved by somebody else. Right? Now, B says in May 2023, Rosedale Company Limited sold the following shares and debentures to increase its liquidity. On May 5th, $180,001 ordinary share at par value. May 10th, 100,000 8% $4 preference shares at par value. And May 17th, 150,000 5% debentures 2023 to 2025. We should use the form provided below to prepare journal entries to record the issue of shares and debentures for Rosedale Company Limited. So the first thing is that for the 5th, there's $180,001 preference share, ordinary share. So all we have to do, since the par value, since it's 180,000 shares at $1, then the total that we would collect is 180,000. So you multiply 180,000 by 1, you're going to get back 180,000. So that's what we receive by the bank, and we credited the ordinary shares because we're increasing the amount of capital that we have, and when we increase capital, we credit. And the narration for that is the issue of 180,000 ordinary shares at par value. Please remember to always have your narratives when they say that it is required. On the 10th now, 100,000 8% $4 preference shares at par value were issued. So it's a 100,000 multiplied by the $4, which is your par value, which gives you $400,000. So it's the number of shares multiplied by the par value, which gives us that, and that's what we collect by the debit as the debit to the bank, and we credit the preference shares to show that preference shares is increasing. The narrative for that is the issue of 100,000 preference shares at par value. Now, on the 17th, 150,000 debentures were also purchased. And remember, that's the amount of money that we're getting for the loan, which is the debenture. So we debit the money when it comes into the bank and credit the debenture to show that we owe that money. Then it says state one ratio that can be used to calculate the liquidity position of a company. And I gave you two: asset test ratio and current ratio. Then it says calculate the total annual dividend payable at the end of the financial year for the transaction on the 10th of May 2023. So the first thing is that I want you to recall that they gave us that the preference share is 100,000 at 8%, and the par value is $4. So that is needed here. So the total annual dividend is the number of shares, which is the 100,000 shares multiplied by the par value of $4 multiplied by the rate of 8%, which is now going to give you 32,000. All right, so as I said before, total annual dividend is your number of shares multiplied by your par value multiplied by your rate, which will give you 32,000. Then it says calculate the total amount payable for the debenture interest expense at the end of 1 year. So it's the debenture multiplied by the interest, which would have given you 7,500. Where did I get that debenture and that interest? Remember, it was given to you up here. This is the total debenture that we collected, and this is the interest. Very simple question. You should have, if you're doing this question, you should get full marks. Now, the last part of the question, which some persons would find a little more challenging, is F, and it says at the end of the year's operation, Rosedale Company Limited calculated a net profit of 48,500 before debenture interest payments. Calculate the total amount payable or available for paying dividends to ordinary shareholders. So the net profit is 48,500. We just calculated that debentures would be 7,500 for the interest, and $32,000 would be paid over to the preferred shareholders. So we need to find out the total that we're going to subtract from our profit before what is going to be available to ordinary shareholders. So 7,500 plus 32,000 gives us 39,500, and we less this amount from our net profit, to give us the total that will be available for ordinary shareholders. Then the next part says calculate the percentage return on investment for ordinary shareholders. And I showed two methods, but it's the same thing. It's for those who move faster than some. So if you need to do it in two steps, you can have dividends for ordinary shareholders, which is equal to 9,000 divided by the 180,000, which let me show you where the 180,000 comes from. So remember that there's 180,000 ordinary shares in total. And if we're saying that we have $9,000 to give to that 180,000 shares, then the rate of return would be the dividend divided by the total number of shares multiplied by 100, which is 5%. All right, so your answer is 5%. Alright, so this is where we're going to end this video. If you want to see question 3, please click the link that I'm going to put here, or just watch the next video in our playlist. Thank you. And please subscribe to our channel so that you can get more videos like this one. Thank you. Bye.